session before we actually go out and have some food and drink. So I heard there's actually an open bar. So you want to actually make it through this presentation before you head out to that reception. Now, if you fall asleep, you don't qualify.
We're not waking you up.
Yeah. So if you are here for the Life After a Hackathon session, then you're in the right place. If you're here for some intellectual discussion about data science, you're in the wrong place. So you have to go to the other sessions if you want to get that. So a little background. I wanted to put together this panel because one of the challenges that I see happening is that there's a lot of these events where there's people that are brought together and we work on projects. And how many of you are familiar with a hackathon? Okay, so everybody's familiar with that kind of format. And oftentimes I would ask myself, so what happens after a hackathon? Where do these projects end up? I mean, and there's like a ton of stuff that comes out of a hackathon. Some of them are really great ideas. But what happens after that hackathon? So, let me do a quick introduction. What I will do is I will let each one say a few words about their respective roles in a hackathon and in their particular organizations. And then I will start with some questions. And I want to make this kind of an open dialogue with all of you so that if there's any questions that you might have, you can ask them. So again, my name is Burt Lum, and I come from a little island located in the middle of the Pacific, which is surrounded by 2,000 miles of ocean, which is very difficult to get to. So if there's any disaster, we don't expect any help from the federal government. Okay? So let me just say that right off the bat. Now, it wasn't that hard for me to leave Hawaii to come here, but evidently it's really difficult for anybody to get there because there's no roads. So just to keep in mind, the logistics of all of this. Now, what I have been involved in is, like many of us here, we've been involved with the civic tech movement. And I got involved in 2011 doing city camps, and Honolulu was a Code for America city in 2012, and we got involved with some legislation in 2013, so we passed a couple of bills in the state of Hawaii and the city and county of Honolulu. Recently, the governor of the state of Hawaii said, hey, I want to do a state hackathon. So this is in 2016. So he said, let's do a state hackathon. So he told his CIO, I want to do a state hackathon. So the CIO goes, oh, I better call Burt Lum. So he calls me up and he says, I want you to be a part of our planning committee. Okay? So I said, great, I'll be a part of it, because I've been doing a variety of different kinds of hackathons, from weekend hackathons to 30-day, what I call code challenges. So we got involved, we did in fact, hold up the shirt. That's our shirt from this past code challenge, which actually had our demo day last week, Saturday. Okay, so anyway, so that's the Hawaii Annual Code Challenge, and to give you a sense of what that is that we actually go out to it's a partnership with the state of Hawaii. I'm not in government. I'm a nonprofit, Hawaii Open Data, and we had the state go to the departments and ask them, what kind of challenge or problem do you want the community to help solve? So they come equipped with some kind of a problem, and they actually do what we call a reverse pitch. So that reverse pitch is someone going up in front of, let's say, we had about 300 people show up, and they do a pitch, and then teams form to try to address that pitch. 30 days later, we come back and we have a demo day. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And of course, what is always asked by any of the media or others that are interested in the code challenges, what happened to any of those applications that came out, of the code challenge? So what happened to the application that came out in 2016? What happens to the ones that have come out in 2017? So that's kind of the perspective that I'm coming at this with. So with that, I will hand it over to Ian. And Ian, you're going to share a little bit about your background and why you're here.
I will. So my name is Ian Henshaw. I'm managing partner of Technology Tank, which is a consulting company for technology evangelization, really, or adoption. we do actually a lot in open data, but from my personal standpoint in the hackathon scene, I've been involved in numerous hackathons, both organizing them and participating in them at the corporate level, the municipal level, the state level, the national level, and with civic groups as well. And actually tomorrow I'll be at City Camp NC, which is a 2-day hackathon which kicks off NC Datapalooza, which is a 6-month-long hackathon. So I've got a lot of insight as either an organizer or a participant in good things and bad things, but I've also seen our projects and a lot of other projects, how they go beyond that hackathon. So I'll be able to add some of that flavor to the discussion.
Hi everyone, my name's Abili. I work for a company called AngelHack. So we're the largest hackathon company in the world. We run about 100 hackathons annually. We travel all over the world and set up new hackathons, new ecosystems in new cities. So my role within AngelHack is that I am the managing director of accelerators. So AngelHack's model is that we take the winning projects from these hackathons and we put them through a 12-week accelerator bootcamp. So I run an accelerator program. So from my perspective, I'm coming at it from, we've got these projects that are born out of this hackathon, and how do we turn them into viable businesses, and what happens to them in the years following that hackathon.
Hello everyone, I'm Eder. I wear a couple of hats. One is I run a civic tech event here in Chicago called Chai Hack Night. Has anyone ever heard of that? Yay! Who's been to Chai Hack Night? All right, 2, 3, that's 4. So I've been running that for about 5 years. It's a weekly hack night, and a lot of the origins of our event really come from me going to hackathons and getting burned out on them and trying to figure out a way to keep doing the cool stuff that happens at hackathons without worrying about organizing hackathons. So Hack Night is the model that we came up with, and it's since been spread around all over the country, I think all over the world. Maybe we invented it, maybe not, I don't know. It's hard to say, right? But we've been doing it for a long, long time in the world of civic tech. And a lot of folks look to us as sort of an example as far as civic technology events. So I do that, and then also have a small consulting company called DataMade. And so I do the stuff, civic technology work full-time, and then I also do this volunteer work as well. So we're really excited to be part of this panel. I think we have a lot of broad perspectives, and yeah, really happy to be here. Thanks.
Great. You've probably noticed that there are different formats. I think the hackathon format has really evolved. And when it first came out, it was, like maybe a weekend, maybe 48, 52 hours. And in our case, we've done kind of the 30-day code challenge. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to have the kickoff where the reverse pitches are done, and then over the course of the weekends leading up to the actual demo day, we have workshops. So we have workshops that could be technical workshops, or we could do some team building kind of things, or we could provide them with we did one Saturday right before the demo day, which was like a proto pitch. So any of the teams that wanted to practice their pitch, they could have an opportunity to practice the pitch. Now, one of the things that we try to do is we have a goal, right? Our goal is what is it that we want to achieve as a result of the code challenge. So our goal is, can we come up with some solutions for some of these departments that are pitching? Because the departments have put in some time, and we would like to see some of those departments get some of the challenges addressed. Now, we can talk about how prescriptive that might be, how broad is that challenge, and we can talk about that. But for our goal setting, our goal setting is how do we actually get some of the teams to work on some projects that could actually solve a problem, right? So I want to hear maybe from each one of you, and maybe we'll start with Derek. What are some of the goals that you set for GHAP? I mean, it's a weekly thing. Are there different things that happen every week? And what's the goal that you set?
So the goal that I set,
Or the goal that
of the whole event. So we take a very bottom-up approach to our organizing. I don't dictate what projects get worked on. All I do is actually create a space for people to start their own projects. And we have a whole framework for people pitching project ideas. The rule at Hack Night is anybody can start a project. And all you have to do is just, during the sort of that portion of the evening, stand up and say, I'm working on this, or I have an idea. Maybe does someone want to talk about transportation, accessibility, or does someone want to talk about police accountability? And people self-organize. And that's like the goal, like that's the structure that we found works the best, because it's allowed us to grow from 4 people to 150 people every week without like adding too much administrative overhead. So the goal that I set is to create that space and to nurture that space and to make sure that the groups that feel like that need support get supported, but also that the framework kind of continues to be open and accessible. And then we sort of try to learn. Like again, the groups that we're working with are volunteers, and that's something that I always keep in the front of my mind. You can't do a lot of things with volunteers that you can do with, say, like a paid staff. Like maybe they won't show up next week. Maybe they'll promise that they'll do like, all this awesome work, and then you'll never hear from them again. Like those are realities of working with volunteers. And so making resilient groups that can deal with those kinds of things, with sort of the fluid working force, and also making sure that people continue to have fun. I think that's something else people don't think about too much. But the reason that most people are volunteering their time at our event, instead of say going out to the movies or doing any number of fun activities, like being with their kids, right? Why they chose to be in that room is because ultimately they're getting something out of it. And what's driven behind that is the fact that it's fun. It's fun to work and launch projects. It's also fun to meet new people and learn new skills. And so I kind of keep those as my overall goals. And the long-term idea is sustain it. Like keep the event going, keep building up the community, keep reaching out to more and more folks to bring into our community, because I've found that sustained impact can only happen over a long period of time. And so our goal is to basically persist and to grow, and these are sort of the mechanisms that we've come up with to enable that to happen. So that's the broad goal that we have at Track.
Yeah, I guess it's looked at it from a couple of different angles. So quite similar to you, I guess, Derek. When we look at AngelHack, I think our overall goal is to make it so that anybody can code it. Right? We want to make it accessible for anybody to code. So we set up new ecosystems, we launch in new cities every year. And we go to ecosystems that we know don't have a presence for technology or coding. So that's, I guess, the overall goal of AngelHack. And like you said, to really sustain that. But if I look at it from, I guess, my perspective, working with the accelerator, my goal is definitely to create viable startups. Right? I'm looking at it very much from a portfolio perspective of we have these great ideas coming in, we have these great entrepreneurs, and how can we turn what they've built in 48 hours into something that they can make a living of, something that can really, give a big impact to the world. So that's my perspective. One of the things about AngelHack is that we also work with a lot of corporates. We work with a lot of governments. So from that perspective, we're kind of prescribed to what our goal is. We've worked with corporates that kind of, back to what you said in the beginning, that want a particular goal out of a hackathon. They want a particular technology used. So we can be quite narrow in what that goal is, and it's totally at the hands of what they want from a hackathon. So it's a few different goals that we have, but for sure, that impact has to be up there, and creating new ecosystems has to be up there for hackathons.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I'll give maybe 4 examples. Hopefully not too many. I've got lots, but so it's really important at the front that you give what the purpose of the hackathon is. So we run an event called Triangle of Data Day, which is actually part of a worldwide kind of thing. But the whole goal of that is you have to make something with open data. You just can't, it's got to be open data, so define it. City Camp NC, which I'm going to tomorrow, you have to develop something that gives some community benefit. So it's really broadly defined. NC Data Palooza, which I said kicks off from that. The goal of that is to create an economic entity whether it's a corporate entity or a nonprofit, kind of what AngelHack is trying to do with these things. And then I went to a really cool hackathon, a PayPal hackathon called DataMade, which is really cool. Their goal was you had to create an app for social good, but it had to use the PayPal engine. So again, very specific things about what you're trying to do as you're in the hackathon.
Now, you know, many of you come from the data science arena, and whether it's via academia or working with some of the big consultants like Accenture, I mean, there is a pathway for your project perhaps to get some traction or see the light of day. Now, the question that I have for the panelists, most of these hackathons really, well, you know, if it's for a corporation, a lot of times it'll be employees in that corporation. But for the most part, at least the ones that I've been involved in, they are for the citizens or the community to get involved. And so the question is, why would you want to get the community involved? Why would you want to get citizens involved? What's the benefit to the actual goal that you're trying to achieve by getting all these programmers, developers, you know, civic enthusiasts? Why do you want to get those people involved?
Well, people want to be involved. And, you know, people with skills want to use those skills. People have been involved with cities doing park cleanups, and they would watch, and lots of stuff like that. But, so instead of, you know, telling them, no, you can't use your skills, and we don't want your help, you know, people want their place, where they live, to be a better place. So providing them some mechanism to help with that is useful.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. And, you know, I think nobody knows problems better than the people that have those problems, right? So that's ultimately why you want to get people involved. The more people you have, the more perspectives that you have on that particular problem. And I think for us, that's what we see, and that's probably the most important thing. I think the example where it's most prevalent for us is when we go to new ecosystems or new environments that we haven't been in before. We wouldn't be able to survive in that environment if it weren't for the people that were showing us how that environment worked. And that translates throughout a hackathon and the technology that's being used in a particular region.
Yeah, definitely echo what Patty's saying there about the diversity of perspectives and skills and actually like living the problem that you're trying to solve. That is like, I've seen that happen over and over and over again at AngelHack. The best projects are oftentimes those ones run by people who are actually experiencing it. So like, great example, City of Chicago is terrible at recycling. There's a woman who showed up to Hacknight and said, hey, my building doesn't recycle. What can I do? And built a team around that question and ended up finding out that the city has some law, but they just don't enforce it. And so the app they ended up building was a map where you could report that your building doesn't recycle. And that data was then published publicly. And you could see something, I think they got around 3,000 submissions all across the city of Chicago about places that don't have recycling in their residential buildings. And they were able to like basically make the city look really bad, right? And force them to actually reconsider this policy. And then that led to the drafting of a new city ordinance, which actually was passed and went into effect January this year. So that was like literally a person like solving their own problem and doing so, solving a problem for the entire city, right? And by the way, she was not a coder. She is a UX designer, and she pulled in a bunch of resources. She had her own skills to be able to do that research around the question, and then brought in some coders to do and work on the app. And I found that that is the strength of having a diverse team, right? You can get those different perspectives. And so that's why we want to bring anybody and everybody who is interested in this stuff to try Hacknight. We want to, our ultimate goal is to have Try Hacknight represent all the diversity of race, of skill, of geography of the city of Chicago at our event, because that's who we're trying to serve, is this city of Chicago.
It's actually pretty difficult to work on a project if you don't have that problem, or you don't have that pain point. It's actually really, really difficult. So yeah, it makes sense that you would have to be working from your perspective.
So Derek actually helped start answering the next question, which is, you know, how do you measure success out of a hackathon? And I'm going to put Andy on the spot here because she's been involved with hackathons across the country, and Hawaii was one of the places that had a hackathon by AngelHack just like maybe a couple, 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you the question: was, in your estimation, was it successful, and how did it rank in terms of its success relative to all the others that perhaps were implemented?
Okay, so we'll just talk about Honolulu right now. Okay, so it's an interesting question. So I guess just to give you guys some context as to where we're at the moment. So we just finished our hackathon series. So we're in our 90 cities globally, including Honolulu. And right now we're in the process of going through that accelerator program. So Honolulu, the team, they produced a startup that works with shirts. And it's about a subscription service for people to advertise on t-shirts. So in terms of rankings of where they are, it was the first time that we were in Honolulu. So that's the first thing actually I want to tell you guys. So it was an amazing, I guess, time for us to really start to open up that ecosystem. We had, I believe, a really impressive turnout for a first-time ecosystem. I believe we had maybe 100 attendees in Honolulu, so it was great for us. And they're making traction with their company. They already have a client that's on board that wants to work with them and advertise their t-shirts. And now they're looking at their revenue model. And we are in the process of selecting our team, so they're going to be coming out to Silicon Valley for our demo day. I cannot reveal to you yet whether or not Honolulu will be one of those teams because we haven't made the selection yet. But they're doing pretty well, and this is 2 months post the hackathon, right? It's 6 weeks into our accelerator program that they've made this traction. They've already got a client on board, so we can directly see the results, very soon after doing a hackathon. And this is obviously short term, and longer term, I mean, I could go into our portfolio successes that we see after hackathon.
No, that's a great answer, and
Yeah.
I just want to let people know that Addie was not in Honolulu. There was another AngelHack employee, her name is Madison, and just the fact that you remember the team that won out of the teams that presented at the Honolulu AngelHack is testament to that team, and there's actually some progression that they're moving forward in. So that's great.
I mean, to be fair, I work directly with the team, so it's actually my job is actually to work with the team. But it's still good job doing your job. Good job.
So Ian, do you have anything to add to that?
In terms of success, yeah, so you can define success broadly. So a lot of municipal hackathons, it's just they want activity, they want to start developing an ecosystem of people to be involved. The ones that are more serious, I would say, not that municipal ones are not serious, there has to be some sort of, in my opinion, there needs to be some sort of supporting organization, whether it is a municipal wants to get a county or city or state. They want to take something and make it better. They need to have people on the team that does that. And the reason for that is you're going to get, as a team, you're going to get to the point where you need information about the data that you can't get, and normal people can't get. Government employees can get that, and they can help you with that, understand what it is, so you can move forward. And it also helps that somebody's interested in what you're doing. If you keep working at this and this municipality doesn't seem to care, why is the team going to keep doing this? And then from the standpoint of corporate municipal, I think just an accelerator, incubator, any of these things that help teams that come out of the numerous type of more commercial type hackathons, that sort of structure helps these teams move forward, where other than that, they're going to hit so many roadblocks that they've just never been in developing. Some of them haven't. There's some habitual people that go to hackathons like me that probably don't need that, but there are people, they need some sort of support to keep going. Success for those they need, if they don't provide that support, they're not going to be successful.
Just to piggyback off of that, there's a saying that we have come to say quite a lot at Hack, which is that data never speaks for itself, and that is one of the actual benefits of our event. Is we actually have folks from the chief data officer for the city of Chicago, Tom Shank. He's awesome. He comes to our event regularly, and he makes himself available as a resource to people working on data. And so it's I just want to echo what Eden was saying, is that like you need to have that personal connection to someone, I think, oftentimes, just to get beyond the sort of the rows of data. I mean, there's so much nuance as far as how's data collected, what transformations did it go through to get to where you're looking at it, right? And you need to have that expertise available, and that's oftentimes the only place to get it is in these kinds of events where these different folks come together.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a little bit to that. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but on data analytics type of hackathons, it's typically a point in time. So it's something you can do analysis of data set or multiple data sets, and you come across this dilemma. You find an artifact in the data and say, this is great, I found something. But you have no idea what it is. And without help from the government, understanding what that is can be a lengthy process. And then the next thing is, how do you solve it once you figure out how to understand it? So without that structure and that support from the municipal side on, data analytics, or even on, if you're on a municipal, or if you're even an insurance company or healthcare provider, or somebody that's provided some data, you see an artifact. The question is, what do you do now?
A lot of times it's like, oh yeah, that's when we upgraded to our new system, right? And like, whoa, there's a data flaw, right? Like, it happens more often than not. It seems like you've like, I found the thing, and you're like, oh yeah, no, that was someone's mistake. It's fixed now. Thanks, right? That happens.
Yeah, I echo that. I mean, it's key to really have the government representative who's a stakeholder that can be a subject matter expert. And if they are there, then the people that are working on some of these projects are going to feel more compelled to really not only work hard on it, but get the sort of there's an incentive part, right, to get some recognition by those leaders that some great work has been done by the citizens. So in terms of incentives, and I know we've wrestled with this over the course of all the hackathons that have been going on. There's what is it that actually incentivizes someone to want to participate in any of these hackathons? There is this thing called hackathon fatigue. A lot of people are just getting burnt out on these because they feel like it's a source for free work, right? So they come to this thing and they feel like you just want to use and abuse us to do some free work. And then you have the other side of the spectrum, which is why don't we give out prize money? And we've wrestled with this as well. People feel that if money is actually involved, then this competition becomes almost unmanageable. People start to become very almost adversarial with each other so that they could position themselves to win. So I'd like to pose that to any of the panel here. What do you see as some of the key incentives and the pros and cons with things like money?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So I talked about the PayPal hackathon, AngelHack. So the end prize there was something like $100,000. But you have to pass your city and then go to the finals. Now, what that meant was it brought some of the best developer talent out of the woodwork that typically don't go to hackathons because they're in hackathon, with fatigue. They developed their own teams. Some companies, like 4 people, they said, okay, we're going to go. We can knock out any application in 24 hours. And what they did, they didn't just do it for themselves. Again, this was for social good. They went and they picked somebody that was pitching an item. They said, okay, we're going to pick somebody, and then we're going to knock this out. And it became a competition for, it was kind of like, bragging rights about who's got the best dev team. So in that case, it was really helpful. But in others, if people just want to win the money and then not do anything, then that's not good either.
And you think about all the other teams that put forth a good faith effort and they're just outclassed and wasted their time in a lot of ways, right? It could feel that way, right?
Sure, absolutely.
So I've been involved in hackathons where there are prizes and I didn't win and I felt bad about that. But then the outcome was I kept doing this because I'm doing it for reasons that kind of go beyond money. And the folks that won, I haven't heard from them in years, right? They just took the money and left, right? And going back to my overall goal, which is to sustain this, I think there is something inherent that we're tapping into at Hack Night, which is this, I mean, there's just untapped sort of like civic excess time that people want to spend to give back to their city. And sometimes that's like going and volunteering at a soup kitchen or building houses. But sometimes it's also like using your tech skills to like build a website, or build an app, or to do some data analysis. And I think there's a similar spirit there. And creating spaces like civic hack events allow that excess to be sort of captured and funneled and sort of matured and nurtured. So we don't, if you can get where I'm going with this, don't ever do prizes, because that's like, I've found that it can really distort and exclude a lot of people who just really want to do this for their own reasons. And as soon as you enter money into a situation, it can really distort the kinds of interactions. And some people can walk away feeling burned. And that's like the last thing I want to have happen, right? Is someone feel bad about participating in an event that I run. So that's kind of been my experience and sort of how it's shaped how we run our event.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So conversely, at AngelHack, we typically give prizes. And the reason why we give prizes is that we ultimately find at events where we don't, we have fewer people that turn up. So we normally give prizes, and it also normally comes because we work with people for our hackathons. So the prizes are coming from these corporates or sponsors of the event. We don't normally do cash prizes. So it's very unusual for us to do a cash prize. It's usually some kind of gadget or some kind of tech thing that we do. There is one hackathon where we have a cash prize, and I think it's about $100,000. And it's in Las Vegas called Money 2020, and it's insane. I've never been to it, but I've heard rumors about this hackathon. And what's really interesting about this hackathon is that they pay for everybody to get to the hackathon. The sponsors completely pay for that. So I think that is actually the biggest value proposition that you can give to people, is making it accessible for them to get to that hackathon rather than a prize, because then what you're going to find is exactly what you guys are saying. It's people that want to hack, that want to be there, but may not have the means to get there. Yeah, I ultimately think it's a good thing to give prizes, because I think it incentivizes people, and it's just really about how you package it and how you frame it.
So Abby, you did make it a point to say that you don't give cash prizes.
Yeah.
So was there any thought behind or decision on the part of the organizers why cash was not a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of coming back to what you were saying a little bit, Derek, about like people feeling burned, and maybe it has kind of a different feel when you are going to get a cash prize versus like a tech gadget. It's also a different thing to ask somebody to sponsor like money rather than sponsor like a prize, like a gadget. It has a different feel, and it is conscious, right, for us to not do that, and it's worked well for us.
So just my experience has been, we wrestled with this point about cash prizes, and we actually had a discussion about, okay, so if we don't give the first prize team the $5,000 that we said was first prize, what do we give them instead? So one of the answers was, oh, why don't we give them computers? So then we wrestled with, well, who do you give the computer to? I mean, how much computers can you buy for $5,000, right? And what if the team is 5 or 7 people? What do you do? How do you distribute that piece of hardware to all of those people? Then the next question was, oh, why don't we get the Amazon credits? Why don't we do something like that? Well, that's it would have been good if Amazon was a partner of ours, and then we could give Amazon credits. But I didn't, it wasn't going to be easy for us to just go buy $5,000 worth of Amazon, dollars, and then just dole it out to the winners. So we wrestled with that same issue, but had to basically settle for cash because it was easy. I give you some money, and you are responsible for distributing it across your team, and that was an easy way to at least kind of deal with that issue.
And that, just an observation hearing on these answers. I mean, so yeah, I'm like, I don't like prizes, but I think that also is because of the event that I run and what we're trying to do. We're in Chicago, and we've been in Chicago operating 5 years. And AngelHack is very different. You're going to different cities, and your job, it sounds like to me, is to get that initial spark in a new city. A place that's never done this before. And looking back at sort of what started, like Chai Hack Night, is there were hackathons that did offer prizes. And it was actually a good incentive for some folks. It wasn't ultimately what inspired me to do the work, but it inspired other folks to make the event eventually successful, right? Because there was this incentive, right? And so I see from the models that obviously our groups are different, have a different model. And so that's, I guess is to say, there's no sort of like one size fits all, right? We have a certain specific model that's like very geographically focused and like long term, and prizes don't make sense for us. But in other contexts, it might make a ton of sense, right? It might be necessary, right, for it to be successful.
Yeah, I'll say as an organizer, the hope is that the winning team will put that money as seed money to be able to move their project forward. Obviously, we can't require them to do that, but that's what the hope is.
So I do want to open it up for questions, from the audience. I do want to cover one more thing, because that's why I track all the panelists here, is what happens after the hackathon. Now, you got a sense as to what happens, with AngelHack and maybe with it's not Chi Hack, right?
It's Chai.
Chai.
But cheese cool too, Zen.
Yeah. So anyway, in our case in Hawaii, there's a couple of things that we look for to see if there's ways that we can't ensure that there's going to be traction with some of these projects, but some of the key things that we try to look for is there a stakeholder? Is there, there has to be somebody that this problem, this solution is solving for. So the stakeholder is really important. Another thing that is kind of key is that, and it stems from that stakeholder. Couple of variations. One is our CIO could then take this project and do something with it, right? So that's a couple of projects took that path as a result of this last code challenge, where the CIO really likes this project, and so he is going to take it upon himself to help it get some traction. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that I do some legislative stuff, so I try to introduce some bills, and one of the bills that I introduced in 2016 was actually 2017, we're going into 2018 now. So in 2017, I introduced a bill in the state of Hawaii to look at raising some money from the ledge to actually create a program that would grant some money to the teams that came out of, like the code challenge. And the money that we would raise from the ledge would get matched. So we would raise a matching, so it'd be kind of like the accelerator model. In Hawaii, what we did was we raised some money with the ledge, and then some matching money from investors would take that, so that there's private sector, there's a stakeholder within private sector, and then use that as a grant program to incentivize or to actually get some of the teams to work on their projects to get it further, some further traction. So anyway, I want to bring that up with our panel and find out what other ways do you see gaining traction for any of these projects.
I've pretty much given all my comments. So I'll
Okay.
give it to you.
So for AngelHack, our main value proposition to these startups is really through our accelerator program. With that accelerator program, our main goal is, like I said, to make them into viable startups. And a lot of that means trying to help them to raise funding too at the end of the accelerator program. So we hold a demo day where we invite a lot of our network down to this demo day. A lot of investors come to that demo day in the hope that on that night or following that demo day, they can raise funding and move their startup and keep scaling out their startup. So that's probably our main value proposition. But it also, again, depends on, I guess, where we started from with that particular hackathon or that particular theme. For example, we did a lady problem series of hackathons, and what that was really trying to do was to empower female entrepreneurship. So it was for female-led teams, and we ran that as a global series in about 20 cities, and then we also accelerated these top companies. And our main value proposition there was really, obviously, A, to try and spur female entrepreneurship, right? And to also give exposure to female entrepreneurship. So it really depends on our starting point as to what our end value proposition is, but it's always to try and help move these startups along.
And I'd say for us, just kind of go back and summarize what we're all about. I'd say it's less about traction, it's more about momentum, right? We already have traction, like we're established, like, you know, like people know who we are in Chicago. Like the mayor knows who we are, right? And like a lot of people come to us because of our reputation. And so what I focus on these days is about momentum and keeping things going and making sure that the projects and teams have the support that they need to get success and meet success as they define it, right? Which is sometimes it's like passing a new law, sometimes it's like the city implementing a new data analytics project for like when they close the beaches, which they did. And you know, it can vary all over the place. So that's what we really focus on.
And if you haven't already seen the Hack Night website, they do list all the projects that are getting worked on.
So it's changing.
It's a great resource to find out, like, you know, all the things that are coming out of your guys' weekly Hack Nights. Any questions? I wanna give you guys a chance to give us some some thoughts on what you're thinking about.
I mean, you guys are out of time, but I was gonna ask. So you're all software developers, so you know we're always thinking about what we can do better next time. What's next up on your personal list for improving your efforts?
Succession planning, having more people do the job that I do. So I'm not the bottleneck. I've always tried to remove myself as a bottleneck. But like, it's harder for me to make it to every hack night these days. That's like I was going straight for like 4 years, and now like I can't make it every night. So finding other folks to systematize, it's like boring, right? It's like going from like an initial stage startup to like a small business. It's like you gotta have like processes, you know, in place. It's like super not exciting, but super necessary for our organization to continue on. I mean, we gotta raise 60 grand every year. That's what our budget is now, you know, and that takes work and time and the process to do.
Yeah, from our side, it's just building momentum around this whole area of civic tech and data science. Yeah, there is a succession thing because I'm not going to be around, you know, for the next 10 years.
Yes, you will.
So it's really all about trying to build momentum around this field because we in Hawaii, a small little island, middle Pacific, 2,000 miles of ocean around us. You know, we're trying to figure out like how do we succeed in this global marketplace, right? We got to get our kids prepared for this whole onslaught of data, computer science, data science. So part of our vision, my vision is, can we leverage government as a platform to provide some of the resources that these students can come out and actually do something with, and then through the process of doing that, they get the skill that they can be more competitive in the marketplace. I mean, that's part of what I want to see.
Yeah, I just want to say, Vicky, I'm not a software developer, but I play one on TV. But from the standpoint of, there's a lot of municipal or nonprofit type of hackathons. And the biggest thing that we constantly strive for is buy-in from the different departments in the municipality and ownership of it as well. And so that's what we work on forward. That's what we need to do better every time, is get more buy-in from the stakeholders.
I think for AngelHack, our long-term vision and our next step is we really believe that we can solve the world's biggest problems, through technology and through things like hackathons. And we want to keep moving into new ecosystems, into new regions, and making entrepreneurship accessible for everybody. For me, I guess my personal next step and my personal goal is more accelerators. Right? I'm in the accelerator space, and I'm always going to want to do more accelerators. And developing economies, new technologies, new regions, next step. Has to be.
Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so outside of the kind of group that pre-planned this, let's say AngelHack, they know they're going to come in together, they have an idea of what they're going to do, and they know the technologies around it, even if they haven't written the code. Then you have if you don't have that, you have these two problems. You have one, maybe this is only 48 hours and the technologies that you can build is kind of limited to UX, maybe using some already toolkits that already exist. There's like the technological depth that you can get into in a hackathon is kind of shallow, especially for us data scientists here. And then the second, I guess, is team dynamics. So, you know, if you didn't come in with a team already, 50% chance you're going to hate 50% of the people on the group that randomly came together. So how do you deal with those two things in groups that you see afterwards?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So about 50% of our startups actually are not people that have met before, 50% of our teams. So we encourage people to come that aren't in a team, and we work very hard to build teams actually at hackathons. So I started with AngelHack a year ago, and it was something that completely blew me away because I assumed that these were all pre-teams. So that's the first thing, teams formed on the spot. And what's really interesting about that is that it's then based on skill sets. Right? When you look at team dynamics and what really makes a successful team, you know, we find it's really based on having those balanced skill sets. And when you don't come with people that you've met before, you look for that at a hackathon. So we found that to be really successful. And then you were talking,
technical depth.
The technical depth. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I would say for us, because we know that we kind of want these teams to go into an accelerator, or we're trying to push these teams a little bit further past the hackathon. We do think there is some technical depth in 48 hours, but I guess we kind of cover that by having an accelerator afterwards, right? Because we go pretty deep into the tech, and we really push that technical talent from the beginning. Like our accelerator program, the first half of it is solely focused on the tech and building.
I guess I meant, so do you find that most of the teams pick projects that are maybe UX focused or something like on top and they don't have...
No, actually the opposite.
Okay.
So most of the people that come to our hackathons are developers, right? Like 95% are developers. So we're tech heavy. So what people struggle with is actually like the UI UX side of it, or they struggle with the biz dev side of it rather than the tech.
Okay.
You know, in our case, we try to provide, it's a 30-day thing, right? So we have workshops. So we try to help the team come up with some expertise, try to find some match within the personalities that they're dealing with, and then over the course of, you know, those 4, let's say, Saturdays, they present something. So there's a little bit of, you know, effort to try to help develop, you know, those teams. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you for hanging out with us for this amount of time on the first day and right before the reception. So if you could join me in recognizing our panel. Thank you, listeners. Now, the next little bit of instruction is that, you know, we're supposed to find our own way to venue 610.
I think they're going to do a closing first.
No, they said they're going to forego the closing.
Oh.
So there's a venue 610 that we're all supposed to find a way to, and that's